Welcome friends, in this video let's look at some of the important lakes of the world and their location. First let's look at the Great Slave Lake. Great Slave Lake. And this Great Slave Lake is in Canada, Northern Territory of Canada, and this is the Great Slave Lake. And on the northern side we can find Great Bear Lake. So on the northern side is the Great Bear Lake, and south of it there is the Great Slave Lake. Next let's look at the Aral Sea. Aral Sea. This Aral Sea, Kazakhstan in the north and Uzbekistan in the south. So Aral Sea, we find Kazakhstan in the north and Uzbekistan in the south, and it is endorheic lake. That means it has no outflow into any of the water body like rivers and oceans. So all the water is conserved within the lake itself. And this Aral Sea was very much bigger during 1920s and 30s, but during 1960s the Soviet Union diverted most of the rivers that is flowing into the lake for irrigation purposes. So without any water, this lake shrink to 10% of its original size by 2007. So it was much bigger previously than the present. And this Aral Sea is one of the biggest lake in the world. It was one of the biggest lake. And now let's look at the Lake Baikal. Lake Baikal. Lake Baikal is in Russia. Okay, it is in Russia. It is nearer to Mongolia. Okay, Lake Baikal is a Rift Valley lake. That means it is formed within the Rift Valley, and it is the largest freshwater lake in the world by volume. There is a difference between by volume and surface area. Okay, it is the largest freshwater lake by volume. Contains roughly 20% of the world's unfrozen surface freshwater, and it is one of the cleanest lake of the world. Okay, and next let's look at the Great Bear Lake. Great Bear Lake. Great Bear Lake is in northern Canada, as we discussed earlier, and this is Great Bear Lake, and the southern part of it we find Great Slave Lake. Okay, and next let's look at the Lake Tanganyika. Lake Tanganyika is in Africa. Tanganyika, Lake Tanganyika. And this is also one of the Rift Valley Lake. It is formed in the Rift Valley, and this is shared by 4 countries. On the eastern side we find Tanzania, on the western side we find Democratic Republic of Congo, on the northern side Burundi, and on the southern side Zambia. And most of the area is present shared between DRC and Tanzania, more than 40 to 45%. And next let's look at the Lake Huron in North America. Lake Huron is one of the 5 great lakes of the North America. It is present in the US-Canadian border, and this is Lake Huron. On the eastern side of Lake Huron we find Lake Michigan. On the northern side there is Lake Superior. Okay, on the southern side Lake Erie, and eastern side of the Lake Erie we find Lake Ontario. So there are 5 lakes in the Indo-Canadian border, US-Canadian border. So India is coming more and more for me. And here next let's look at the Lake Victoria. Victoria. Lake Victoria is in Africa. Okay, and here it is shared by 3 countries. Okay, on the eastern side we find Kenya, on the north Uganda, and south Tanzania. And this is one of the African Great Lakes. Okay, and this lake was named after Queen Victoria of England, and it is also largest tropical lake in the world. Okay, this is Lake Victoria. Lake Superior I discussed earlier. Then let's look at the Caspian Sea. Caspian Sea. Caspian Sea. Caspian Sea is also endorheic lake. That means it has no outflow. And this Caspian Sea is shared by countries like Kazakhstan, Russia, Azerbaijan, Iran, Turkmenistan. Okay, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Iran, Azerbaijan. Okay, Russia. So this is one of the largest lake of the world, and it is the largest enclosed inland body of water on the earth. Not one of the. It is the largest enclosed body on the earth. And on the western side we find Black Sea. Okay, and further western side we find Mediterranean Sea. So on the eastern side of the Caspian Sea, you can find the Aral Sea I discussed earlier. Okay. And next, let's look at some of the smaller lakes, like Lake Balkash. Lake Balkash is in Kazakhstan. Okay, Lake Balkash is in Kazakhstan. Here, next, Lake Titicaca. Lake Titicaca. Lake Titicaca is in the Bolivia and Peru border. Okay, it is present between the Bolivia and Peru border, and on the western side we find Peru, and on the eastern side we find Bolivia. Here, only two countries has no access to the sea in South America. One is Bolivia and another one is Paraguay. And all the countries of the South America has coastal areas, that is Brazil, French Guiana, Suriname, Guyana, Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, okay, and Peru, Chile, Argentina, Uruguay. And only two countries, that is Bolivia and Paraguay, do not have access to sea. Okay. And next, let's look at the Lake Nyasa. Lake Nyasa. Lake Nyasa is shared by Mozambique on the east, southeast, okay, and Tanzania in the north, okay, and Malawi on the western side. Okay, this is the Lake Nyasa. Next, let's look at the Lake Onega. Onega is in Russia. Lake Onega is in Russia. Okay, and this is on the western part of the Russia. And Russia shares border with most of the countries. Okay, it shares border with Norway as well. Norway, Finland. Okay, Belarus, Ukraine, and countries like Georgia, Azerbaijan. So it shares most of the borders, and it does not share a border with Lithuania. Please remember, Lithuania is not sharing border with Russia. Okay, and next lake is Lake Rudolph. Lake Rudolph is in Kenya. Okay, Lake Rudolph is in Kenya, and small part of portion of the Lake Rudolph is also present in Ethiopia. Okay, major part of the Lake Rudolph is in Kenya. Okay, and next, Lake Torrens. Lake Torrens is in Australia. Okay, Lake Torrens. Lake Torrens is in Australia. This is the Lake Torrens, and this is Adelaide. And next is Lake Vänern in Sweden. Vänern, V-A-N-E-R-N. Okay, it's in Sweden. Okay, it is in Sweden, and this is Sweden. On the western side of the Sweden we find Norway. On the east, Finland. Okay, Sweden also does not share border with Russia. Okay, and on the southern side we find Denmark. And next is Lake Urmia is in Iran. Lake Urmia is in Iran. Okay, this is Lake Urmia. Okay, and this is it about the important lakes of the world. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel.